guys, how's it going? It's Al, week 7, and I have my top wide receiver rankings for the week. My wide receiver 1s and wide receiver 2s, the top 24 wide receivers that you must play in week 7 in your fantasy football leagues. We're going to talk about every one of them. I've got them ranked based on my projections. I've taken a couple of stands on certain players, and I've got a couple players that are probably ranked below where you think that they should be. But if you have 3 wide receivers that you have 2 spots to play, use this as your start sit list advice. Take the 2 that I have ranked higher and play them over the one that you have ranked lower. It's that simple. We'll keep it that simple the entire year. Look out for the quarterback and running backs videos that come out on Tuesday and Wednesday of every week. They're already out for this week, so hopefully you like those. Drop a like on this one, and let's go.
He's a legend.
The Week 7 Smiz Gang Listener League is posted. It's 5,000 entries, and it is a $10 entry fee with 3 max only. There's absolutely no rake. It's the best tournament that exists on DraftKings, but you cannot find it if you go to the DraftKings lobby. You have to go through smizzle.tv/links. You'll find the link to the Listener League right in there, as well as the links to literally everything else I do. Every Thursday I come out with Best Buys, that link is in there. All of my other channels, those links are in there. Instagram, Twitch channel, if you wanted to catch the live streams, all of that is available in the link tree at smizzle.tv/links. Make sure that you get into it because I will shout out the top 10 finishers on the recap video every Monday. The list is going to get shaken up this week due to the massive list of teams that is on the bye. The Bills are on bye, the Eagles on bye, Cooper Kupp is on a bye week. Just a monster list of players that typically end up in our top 5 or our top 12. So the list is shaken up this week. Starting everything off at number 1 is Devonte Adams for the Las Vegas Raiders, coming off of a bye week himself. Monster set of targets on this guy. 30 targets the last 3 games. Just having a tremendous season, right? 50, like in terms of volume, he's been up and down. Like he's had a 9.2 point game. We saw his absolute floor in week 2 against Arizona, but 30.4 points against Kansas City, 22.5 against Denver. He is rolling, and I'm expecting a big week for him this week against Houston. At number 2, Tyreek Hill has seen very little ill effects from not playing on the Chiefs. And I say this because there was a lot of trepidation when he got traded to Miami of, can Tua get him the ball? Well, Tua's been inactive for a lot of the year. I'm expecting that Tua is going to clear concussion protocol. That is not me. I'm not his doctor. But the expectation is that he is going to play in this next game. Tyreek Hill has had to deal with the downgrade going from Mahomes to Tua. Then he had to deal with the downgrade from Tua to Teddy Bridgewater. Then he had to deal with Skyler as his quarterback because the first 2 guys got concussed. Hopefully we can keep Tua healthy for the remainder of the season so that there's some continuity in this offense. But even with those 3 different quarterbacks, we've seen him post a 45-point game in week 2. He posts 32.7 in week 6, posts 28.9 in week 4. An absolutely dominant receiver getting loads of volume. 15 targets in week 6, 14 targets in week 4, 13 targets in week 2, averaging 23.8 fantasy points per game. Tyreek Hill is number 2. At number 3, Jamar Chase. We finally saw a return to his dominant ways last week with a 35.2 point outburst in his return to New Orleans. But let's just say that the volume has certainly been there, right? Like he got 10 targets last week. He just happened to score a 60-yard touchdown. The one thing that has been absent from his game so far this year, even though it is clearly such a big part of his skill set. 12 targets in week 5, 10 targets in week 3, 9 targets in week 2. He has not struggled for getting volume. They're just not, or they had not schemed him into positions to get him the ball. As most teams are playing that cover 3 this year, they're not giving up big plays. So you have to find ways to get the ball to your wide receivers and then let them work from the intermediate routes. It's not just as simple as, well, they don't have a safety over the top, so we're just going to chuck it downfield and Jamar will be down there somewhere. There's always a safety over the top. This is the new en vogue way to play defense. So you have to find different ways to get the ball in the hands of your playmakers. Speaking of finding new and inventive ways of getting the ball in your playmakers' hands, at number 4 is Deebo Samuel, where the San Francisco 49ers have basically been doing that for the last couple of years. How can we get Deebo the ball and then let him go to work? Because, be honest, they win games with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback for sure, but they are a bit limited at quarterback in what they can do offensively because of Jimmy G's limitations. So they have to get the ball or scheme to get the ball into the hands of their playmakers, and Deebo Samuel is exactly that. Really good spot this week against Kansas City. high expected scoring output, great fantasy environment in this game. Kansas City has struggled a bit on defense, especially to stop opposing wide receiver ones. Deebo fits that mold, clearly in at number 4. Number 5 is CeeDee Lamb. Big upgrade here for CeeDee Lamb, going from Cooper Rush, who he did not struggle with, by the way. I know that he didn't have big fantasy outputs against Philadelphia or the Rams, but those are two ridiculously talented defenses with a cornerback that excels in shutting down opponents' wide receiver ones. Now, the Giants and Washington, 2 games before that with Cooper Rush, 21.7 points, 22.7 points. What's encouraging is, even with Cooper Rush at quarterback, his volume didn't dip. 10 targets in week 6, 8 targets in week 5, 8 again in week 4, 12 in week 3, and 11 in week 2. So getting Dak back is going to improve the ceiling outlook for CeeDee Lamb. The floor is always looking great because of how much volume comes his way. Mike Evans is my number 6 wide receiver on the week, coming off of a dismal game last week where wasn't his fault. The entire Tampa Bay offense was just trash. So as embarrassed as they are, if there is somebody, let's just say, if there is an athlete anywhere in the world historically that you would want to push all of your chips into the middle when they are coming off of a game or a situation or even a month where they've been embarrassed, Tom Brady came out and tweeted, "Football is hard. We've played bad. We have to be better." You saw him on the sideline tearing into his offensive line. If you don't think that he is going to have a bigger game this week, and if he has a bigger game this week against Carolina's defense, that means Mike Evans is going to have a bigger week. He's always going to be on this list because of the volume, because he's one of the top touchdown makers in the league. This is specifically a very good matchup for him. I have Mike Evans as my number 6. At 7, I have Courtland Sutton. I am willing to rank him lower. If you don't agree with Courtland Sutton, that's fine. If you don't want to buy parts of this Denver Broncos offense, that's fine. I get it. Russ has been bad, but Courtland Sutton has not been bad. Coming off of what is a bad game where he got only 3 targets because they threw for like 15 yards in the second half, did the Denver Broncos. Like, something has to change. Something has to give. They are a better team when the ball goes towards Courtland Sutton. They have to get him active. They have to get him the football. The Jets are a tough defense, specifically on the outside, with 2 of the top-rated PFF cornerbacks out there, but Courtland Sutton's volume, predictable volume, where he should be around like 8 to 12 targets a game, holds him in this spot for me. At 8, Amon-Ra St. Brown, coming off of an ankle injury and a bye week. I'm assuming that he is going to be a full go. We also had at Wednesday's practice, all the other wide receivers missed. DJ Chark missed, Josh Reynolds missed. Now, granted, I'm the first person to tell you that Wednesday practice reports don't matter. Thursday and Friday are way more important, but it is something to note that if these 2 guys aren't ready while Amon-Ra St. Brown practiced in full, he may be on track for just a monster game in store with the targets that could be heading his way in a very potential shootout against those Dallas Cowboys. DK Metcalf behind him at number 9. Big target, lots of touchdowns, lots of targets. A game with the highest team total the highest total on the week at 52. In what should be a game they're playing from behind in positive game script situations for DK Metcalf and the pass game. Just more targets to go around always means better things for wide receivers. At number 10, speaking of more targets to go around, Michael Pittman Jr. Continues his march and sits in here as my wide receiver 10 on the week. I'm going to take the under on 16 targets, which is what he had last week. Caught 13 balls as the main focal point in that Colts offense in the absence of Jonathan Taylor. Taylor is back practicing, but is limited right now. We'll see if he can recover and get back into this spot. Tennessee is favored in a road game for the Colts. They're going to have to feed the ball to Pittman. Even in games where he didn't get it as much as we want, he still saw 8 targets against Denver in a very tough situation. Patrick Surtain II is a stud, and we need to start considering that. Obviously, the projections will and do. Tennessee, he had 6. Kansas City, he had 9. I'm looking at like a 15-point floor with a 25-point plus ceiling, 18.3 DraftKings points averaged on the year. Tyler Lockett comes in at number 11. Same situation to me as DK Metcalf. It's hard to pick between the two, but both of them should see at least 25% of the market share of targets in Seattle. And rounding out my wide receiver 1s is the guy that nobody ever wants to put in their wide receiver 1s, and it's Brandon Cooks. They're going to have to throw it. This offense is going to be built around Dameon Pierce. Right, that's just where it's going to go. Las Vegas is not they don't have all that much talent on the outside. We've seen some dud games out of Brandon Cooks, but I think that this is a spot where he gets 7 to 10 targets and very easily plays his way into this wide receiver 1 consideration for the week. He would not be here if not for the massive amount of bye week. He'd sit in his normal spot, right? Between like 15 and 18 on the list. But because of all the big time wide receivers that are out this week on bye, resting on their couches, sipping on smoothies and watching, Brandon Cooks slides all the way up into the top 12. Take a second and be a part of our fundraiser that's going on this season. No Kid Hungry, providing school breakfasts and lunches, as well as at-home care to food insecure kids across the country. We have raised just over $27,000 thus far. That ticker down below me will show that all throughout the football season. This fundraiser will go until December 31st. Every donation is 100% tax deductible and goes through smizzle.tv/charity, where Tiltify will handle everything for you. The donation, they'll send you an email for all of the tax paperwork that you're going to need so that you can utilize that as you will. Every single dollar helps. And once we get to $30,000, that will trigger the next match from me. Every single $10,000 that the community raises, I will match $10,000 up to $50,000, giving us hopefully that grand total of $100,000 raised between the Smiz Gang community, that's you, and myself. So let's make a difference today. Every dollar helps. Be a part of something bigger than yourself. At 13, Christian Kirk slides in here. Only 8 targets the last 2 games. They have to get him more involved. And I believe that they are going to. He should not see any less than 7 targets in any game. Getting him 3 targets against Houston and 5 targets against Indy is a massive offensive mistake. 2 games that they lost, by the way. You paid him $1 bajillion. You have to feed him the ball more. Same thing goes for Deontay Johnson. Another player that has to get fed in order for that offense to be fine. They should be playing from behind in this one, as they are massive underdogs against Miami on Monday night. So put this in another situation where you should see 10 targets from Deontay Johnson. Behind him, another 10 target threat who has not found his way into the end zone at 15, Chris Godwin. I mentioned how much I like this Tampa Bay offense this week, specifically through the main characters: Leonard Fournette, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. Godwin comes in at 15, and behind him we have a return for DeAndre Hopkins, who comes back after a 6-game suspension. And unfortunately, like, I wanted to see this Arizona offense at full strength. I really did, because I know that the majority of people in my replies, the reason that I know that the majority of people don't believe this is because I see them in my replies, who don't think that having 2 all-pro, or not even all-pro, but like Pro Bowl caliber wide receivers, one who's an all-pro and one who's a Pro Bowler, it really makes a massive difference for an offense. This Arizona offense has not been efficient. It has not been good this year. Kyler has not thrown for a lot of touchdowns. They're not converting, and they're not doing what they need to do. But when you get somebody who makes everything else fall into place, right? They've been a fantasy-friendly offense, at least, with a lot of targets going to Hollywood Brown prior to the foot injury, a lot of targets going to Zach Ertz, a lot of carries going to whoever the running back is at that given time, and getting slot play out of either Greg Dortch or Marquise Brown. So they've been solid for fantasy, but I wanted to see what would happen with Hopkins on one side, Hollywood Brown on the other, Rondale Moore in the slot, and Zach Ertz, where they actually would have 4 viable, very viable targets running around, and then the threat of Kyler running around, which would make them more of a threat. But 16 is as high as I can rank Hopkins without having Hollywood on the other side. I need to see how much. I mean, they're going to play him. They're going to play him like a full complement of snaps. It's not an injury. He is going to get out there and run routes, and he is going to get the ball thrown his way. He wasn't super efficient last year, did score a lot of touchdowns, but like didn't really have a lot of yards per play. Some of that is based on the offense. Some of that is his yards after the catch. I'd love to see them throw the ball downfield more. There's a question of whether or not they're ever going to do that with Cliffy at the helm. But I have Hopkins at 16 this week, with Mike Williams behind him at 17 because of the expected dip in targets in the case that Keenan Allen comes back as expected. He is practicing on Wednesday, so that drops him to here at 17, and right behind him the exact opposite sort of a situation with Chris Olave playing on Thursday night. With Mike Williams out, Jarvis Landry out, Chris Olave going to get alpha targets in this one. Going to lead the team, in my opinion, in terms of the market share targets, with probably Alvin Kamara being right behind him. And even with Andy Dalton, they still challenge downfield with Olave. So another big time spot for Olave, even though it is against Arizona, even though it's on Thursday night, you have to make those decisions. If you have Olave on your roster, you're playing him in this spot, just even without Jameis Winston. I prefer Olave with Winston in because of how much his profile, Winston's profile, fits Olave's profile, right? One is super capable at getting open downfield, and the other really just likes to throw the ball downfield regardless of whatever happens. So I would prefer it if Andy Dalton wasn't under center. I would really prefer it if they would stop bringing in Taysom Hill as much as they bring Taysom Hill in. So that keeps Olave down around 18, even with the bye week, even with everything else. He's still in my top 24, but I can't really rank him above anybody that's in front of him. Behind Olave, Jacoby Myers, who did not get me $2.1 million, but he did get an absolute metric ton of targets every week except for week 6. We only got 4, but that's a game where they were always going to establish the run. It's a game where they won 38-15. So game log watchers are going to look at that and say, oh, well, he went from 13 targets in week 2 to 8 in week 5 to 4 in week 6. This is going to be a little bit of a different spot. I'm not thinking that they're going to win this game by 23 points because whoever predicts a 23-point win, right? So as this game stays a little bit closer, Jacoby Myers is going to get the lion's share of targets no matter who's at quarterback, whether it's Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi. And I like the offense that they have put in around Zappi to help him be as productive as he possibly can be. But Myers, a talented wide receiver and a target hog. Love him in full PPR. Behind him, Jalen Waddle. He's not going to get the targets that we need him to get unless games shoot out. And it's highly unlikely that a game against Pittsburgh is going to shoot out. So target totals like he saw in weeks 3, 4, and 5 against the Jets and Cincinnati and Buffalo are more likely than the targets he saw against Minnesota and against Baltimore. It's hard to project double-digit targets. It's very likely that Waddle can score a touchdown, and when he does score a touchdown, he can make big plays happen, as we've seen with the 49-yard play in week 6, the 45-yard play against Buffalo in week 3, and the 59-yard touchdown in week 2. That's just something that he brings to the table week in and week out. That's a part of his game. So that's always in play, but like he's going to have to get you there. It's almost like a Gabe Davis, right? Where like if Davis was getting 10, 11, 12 targets a game, if Waddle was predictably getting 10, 11, 12 targets a game, he'd be way higher. But without being able to project more than 6 or 6.5 targets heading his way, the sample size is just a lot lower. The variance is a lot lower. The floor is lower, even though he remains a high ceiling play. Drake London is my number 21, and it's not his fault. He's doing everything that he can. The rookie has been extremely good. He's running a great amount of routes. He's leading his team in terms of target market share. He is a big red zone and end zone target, but they just only throw it like 15 times a game. So Drake London is the walking definition of, would you rather have 50% of a watermelon or 10% of a watermelon or 100% of a grape? I'd rather have 10% of the larger, right? So like they just don't throw the ball. They throw it like they want to throw it like 12 times a game. Sometimes they're forced to drop back like 20 times a game. And therefore the 30% of targets that Drake London gets it works out being like 6 or 7 targets per game. So I wish that there was a different situation there. I wish that they had a more aggressive coach. I wish that they weren't winning games. I wish that there was I wish that a lot of stuff was happening right now in Atlanta, because as long as they're in a position to win games, they're going to keep doing things the way that they do them. And they're winning more games than expectation right now with smoke, mirrors, spit, and bubblegum. But it's not going to persist. You're going to have to throw the ball if you want to win in the NFL over a large enough sample size. Cincinnati going to play from ahead. So there is hope here for London that they get put into positive game script situations where they have to throw the football, and London will be the beneficiary if they do. Behind him is Amari Cooper. Up and down, he's had massive weeks where he's gotten, and I hate the fact, I really do. I hate the fact that his massive weeks have come at home and his 2 bad games have come on the road, because it only exacerbates the amount of people are going to say, well, Amari Cooper on the road, fade Amari Cooper. And if he has a really bad game this week, they're going to say the same thing. But like his last 4 games that he's played at home, 10 plus targets and a touchdown in every single one with the 100 yards 2 times. And the 2 road games, he's gotten 10 targets total. So here we are with Amari Cooper on the road against Baltimore in a game that they should be throwing the ball more because they project to play from behind in this one. I've got Cooper at 22. If you think he should be higher, let me know in the replies down below. At 23, Romeo Dobbs, coming off of a week where he saw 9 targets, lots of injuries around him right now with Christian, the other rookie, Christian Watson, not practicing so far this week, dealing with an injury. Randall Cobb out for a bunch of weeks. He is going to lead this team in terms of target market share, him and Lazard, in my opinion. I believe that Lazard is a good wide receiver, but Dobbs has a much higher upside as an athlete and should profile and project into the one on that Packers offense. And he's been inefficient for the last couple of weeks. When you think about who they've played against the last couple of weeks, that inefficiency kind of starts to make sense. The Giants defense has been extremely solid. He only saw 5 targets in that game, caught 5 of 8 against New England, and then caught 4 of 9 against the New York Jets, who, as I said, have 2 really good cornerbacks. On the outside, against Tampa Bay, he caught 8 of 8 balls. I'm expecting that Aaron Rodgers is going to be as efficient as Aaron Rodgers always has been, specifically the last 2 years when he won the MVP award. I don't think that Aaron Rodgers has declined all that much since like January, when everybody was like, he's the best quarterback in the league, and then they got bounced by San Francisco in the playoffs because Lambeau is not a home field advantage when there's snow. It actually minimizes their advantage because their advantage is at quarterback since Favre and Aaron Rodgers has been there. But I digress. If Dobbs gets those, let's say 7 to 11 targets this week, he's going to produce. And that's right where I have him. I had to forecast in the inefficiencies that he's had the last couple of weeks. But this is where he sits. If you had the foresight to draft him in rounds like 15 to 20 in your draft, or if you picked him up off of the waiver wire, this is where you're going to feast with him in your lineups, because he is definitely getting the play, getting the service of a top 2, a wide receiver 2 right now. And that's what you want to see, right? Now, Juju Smith-Schuster is going to fill out the list as my last player. The 24th player on the list is Juju Smith-Schuster. Finally had a big game. And it's hilarious because he had 3 straight games with 8 targets where he really didn't bust a grape. 13.9 points in week 3, 9.6 in week 4, 6.3 in week 5, all with 8 targets. Now he gets less targets against Buffalo, saw only 5 targets, but he caught all of them. He had 5 catches in week 4 and week 3 also, but broke a tackle, scampered for a 42-yard touchdown, has a 25.3-point day, and everybody now all of a sudden is forgetting the poo-poo Smith poopster, or whatever they were calling him before that game. Juju had himself a big game. Finally, I'm happy to see it. I'm glad that he's in this spot. Not going to pay off as a profit on his 5th round ADP, but you can start him with some sort of confidence knowing that the ball is headed his way and touchdowns fall out of this Kansas City offense like few others in the league. And with everybody else who has drafted these superstar wide receivers and having many of them out this week, Jefferson, Kupp, Diggs, all 1st round wide receivers who are out, Juju finishes off the list at 24. Wish you the best of luck in your matchups this week. Look out for another video right there.
He's a legend.